Welcome to OLC 40. This is class 10, and we are working on unit 2. I am Jillian Percy. My office hours are 9 to 12 and then 1 to 4. The studio right now is 1-800-465-7144. The WASA office, I'm not in the studio, is 1-800-667-3703. You can fax me your work at 1-800-463-7852. Or you can email it to me at jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. You can also re-listen to these recordings over on YouTube at capital G, capital P, ERCY, space, capital W, AHSA. All right, so I wanted to talk about some common homophones. We already discussed there, and 222. So remember that homophones are words that sound the same or almost the same, but they mean something different and they're spelled something different. So sometimes people get to the spot where they accidentally use the wrong one and it's still a correct word. The reason this is important is it's confusing to your reader and spell check will not catch those problems. So sight, spelled S-I-G-H-T, means like to see with your eyes. So eagles have excellent sight. But sight, spelled S-I-T-E, means a physical location or a place on the internet. Like, did you choose a campsite or did you check out their website? Our is a possessive pronoun, which means that something belongs to a group of people. Like, this is our house. Are is the present tense of the verb to be. We are going to the store. Which, spelled W-H-I-C-H, is a word that indicates you're choosing between different options, like which ice cream would you like? Which movie did you want to go to? Which, W-I-T-C-H, is a person who does magic. Like a witch is scary, or I'm going to dress up as a Halloween witch. Weak, spelled E-A-K, means not very strong, like he has weak knees. Week, spelled E-E-K, is a group of 7 days, like this course is 9 weeks long. All right, some other really common ones. Accept and accept. A lot of people just kind of say them as accept. Accept is to agree to something or to receive something, like I accept the job offer. Accept means something is being excluded from the rest, like I want all the furniture except that chair. Weather, W-E-A-T-H-E-R, is the weather, like the temperature, the precipitation outside. The weather is very stormy. But whether, when the WH is there, W-H-E-T-H-E-R, it's often used to indicate doubt or to choose between different alternatives. Do you know whether you'll be home soon? Allowed versus allowed. The first one, A-L-O-U-D, is to say something openly rather than to simply think it. Like, you can't read aloud in the library. The other allowed is the past tense of the word allow. Like you've got permission to do something. I am allowed to drive Dad's car. Your, and I apologize, this is not quite right. It should be Y-O-U apostrophe R-E, is a contraction of U and R. They've dropped the A and the apostrophe to show the A is gone. It looks like this. You're my favorite cousin. But your with no apostrophe, spelled Y-O-U-R, is a possessive pronoun meaning something belongs to you. Is that your boat? Being is the past participle of the verb to be. I have been outside all day. Bean, B-E-A-N, is a legume or a vegetable that can be eaten, right? Like I'm going to have some kidney beans on my taco. Light, L-I-G-H-T, waves of energy from the sun or from artificial bulbs that enable us to see, turn on the light. But light, L-I-T-E, is a version of food that has less calories than normal. Like I will have the light sour cream. Near homophones. These words don't really sound exactly alike, but they're so commonly misconfused that often somebody has one pronunciation and they just use them for both. So this is then and than. Then is a word relating to time or to sequencing things. Like first, I'm going to go to the store. Then I'm going to go to the doctor's office. The writer is saying that they're going to do their errands in a certain order. First the store, And then next, the doctor's office. Than. This is a word that you're using when you're comparing two different options, like, I would rather go swimming than stay inside all day. They don't mean first I'm going to swim and then I'm going to stay inside. They mean they would rather swim way more than they want to stay inside. Another really, really common one is affect and affect. Okay. Affect, it means like something that's going to change or influence something. Like, I'm worried about how the death of the father is going to affect his little girl. The writer is saying that the death might change the little girl in some way. Effect, this refers to an action or an event that is the result of another action. So it was caused by the first action. The effect of the power going off was that all the food in the freezer went bad. The writer is saying that the power going off caused the food to go bad. So one's about cause and one's really more about change. Okay. This is we talked about reading chapter 4. This is just kind of a quick review of chapter 4, so we're all on the same page about what's going on. In chapter 4 of Jimmy Comes Home, Jimmy does some drugs with some of his old friends out at the cabin for several days. The cops come looking for them, and the other boys tell Jimmy to go away as they are sure they will get caught, which would send Jimmy back to jail. They're not so worried about themselves being caught. Jimmy runs away and takes a long time making it back to his house. He sleeps off the drugs, and when he wakes up the next morning, he decides to go to school. He is sure the RCMP will be there soon. Jimmy is surprised by how quiet it is at the school during math class, which is his best subject. He feels like the work is too easy, so the teacher assigns him harder work. However, he decides to ignore her. The RCMP show up at the school office to question him, along with a band constable. He lies and says that although he was at the cabin, he was not doing pills. The cops warn him that this is his last chance and that if this happens again, he will be shipped out to jail. He heads back to class and has a conversation with his teacher. She is trying to convince him to take some math work home, but he feels like this is ridiculous. Teresa, his old girlfriend, is waiting for him outside the classroom. He doesn't want to talk to her and kind of tries to ignore her. She is upset that he doesn't want to talk to her, even about their baby. He is upset and overwhelmed by the conversation with Teresa, and he heads off into the bush. He dreams about his dad when he is young. He finally goes home to bed and realizes that he still is kind of groggy and under the influence of the drugs and alcohol, and the chapter ends with him wondering what happened to his other friends. Okay, so on to new assignments. Chapter 7 total is worth 82 marks, and then the different assignments will have their individual marks. So back in lesson 3, we had to fill in a thought bubble with different forms of reading, things people read. And did you include the word textbooks? I didn't, I know. Believe it or not, writers of textbooks do their best to make reading their pages simple, and yet often students struggle to find information they need. There are certain features that most writers of textbooks include to try and help students, but often those features are not appreciated because they are misunderstood. For example, look at all the details in the sample of a textbook page on page 12. The amount of information crammed onto one page can make you tired even before you begin reading. And I'll quickly flip to that so you can see it because it's just nutty. Look at that. Way too much information. All right. Hang on. So our first assignment in lesson 7 is assignment 20, understanding a textbook. And this part is worth 15 marks. Most people consider skimming and scanning a search technique rather than a reading strategy. However, when you're reading large volumes of information, they may be more practical than reading. For example, you might be searching for specific information or looking for clues or reviewing information. Skimming is used to quickly identify the main ideas of a text. When you read the newspaper or a textbook, you're probably not reading it word for word. Instead, you're just kind of skimming the text. Skimming is often done at a speed about 3 to 4 times faster than normal reading. People often skim when they have lots of material to read in a limited amount of time. Use skimming when you want to see if an article might be of interest in your research. So if you were, doing your research for a brochure and you wanted to be looking at alcohol addiction, you might be skimming really quickly to see if a site's got anything on alcohol addiction or if it only deals with drug addiction. There are many strategies that can be used when skimming. Some people read the first and last paragraphs using headings and summaries as they move down the page or the computer screen. Or you might read the title and the subtitles, the subheadings and the illustrations. You could consider reading the first sentence of each paragraph. This technique is useful when you're seeking specific information rather than reading for comprehension. Skimming works well to find dates, names, and places. It might also be used to review graphs, tables, and charts. Scanning is a technique you often use when looking up a number in the telephone book or a word in a dictionary. You're searching for keywords or ideas. In most cases, you know what you're looking for, so you're concentrating on finding a particular answer. Scanning involves moving your eyes quickly down the page, seeking specific words or phrases. Scanning is also used when you first find a document to determine whether it will answer your questions. Once you've scanned the document, you might go back and skim it. When you're scanning, look for the author's use of organizers like numbers, letters, steps, or the words first, second, and next. Look for words that are bold-faced or in italics or in a different font, size, color, or style. Sometimes the author will put key ideas in the margin, like a little sidebar thing. For textbooks in particular, the table of contents will help you find new information more quickly. The glossary can help you find definitions. The index can help you locate a certain topic within the textbook, and graphics can give you a visual representation of what the text is saying. Margin notes and bolded text can emphasize important points. Okay, so for example, if you are thinking of a word or a phrase that you're looking for and picture that in your mind. So they're saying skimming is a little bit different. I guess I would call this maybe scanning. They so often use the words skim and scan together, so that I often think of them as being almost the same, but they are slightly different. So I guess this is more scanning, okay? Let's see, well, let me fix this. We'll call it scanning, okay? Fix that. So for all my my purists here, we've got it right. So scanning is when you've got one word and you're kind of looking for that word. So let's say I was doing something on Indigenous women. So I'm looking for the words Indigenous and I'm looking for women. And I'm not reading, I'm just looking for those two words. So there's Indigenous, but it's talking about ally or not allowances. Now, this doesn't say women, but those are women, sisters, wives, and daughters. Let's see, well, let me highlight. Yeah. Indigenous people. French relied on Indigenous men and women. Women's work in Indigenous societies. Indigenous people. Okay. So if I was looking for something specifically on Indigenous women, obviously the first paragraph doesn't have very much. This has quite a bit. Okay. Then I'd have to think, well, am I looking for what the work is, or am I looking for something different? So I have to be very specific when you're scanning. I didn't read the whole thing. I just was looking for those specific words. Okay. Oh, this is talking about text features because the next assignment is about text features a little bit. So hang on a second. See if this comes up properly.
So you think you know Wix, but do you really?
My apologies.
First up, we've got Shake.
Can you hear this?
Detected using power.
Okay, we're going to head back to our main text. I just thought it was really cute. All right, so we're talking about text features because this whole lesson is really about how to read textbooks. Because textbooks are often on topics that are new to us, they often have specialized vocabulary. It can be really challenging to read. Sometimes the text is really small. So that's just kind of one of the things we're going to teach you, because a huge part of school is learning to read textbooks. So we want you to be good at this and to feel skilled and comfortable doing it. Okay. I'm going to read this first, and then we're going to look at the scanned page. I saw the scanned page in, I'll show it real quick. This is in terrible shape. So I apologize if this is what you're looking for in the photocopied thing, because it's so blurry. I don't know how people would read it. There is a link here, and we'll go to it in a minute. But before we go there, I'm going to kind of look at the questions so we know what we're looking for, okay? Take the time to skim and scan the mock textbook page that follows. Don't read it. Just look around the page using the skimming and scanning tips we talked about, and then answer the following questions. What is the first thing that captures your attention? What is a subheader? Who wrote The Alphabet versus the Goddess? What is the main idea of this page? What are some of the techniques used on the page to draw your attention to certain areas? What will you usually find at the beginning of most chapters? Name 3 examples of typography, which we talked about earlier this week. What is the purpose of typography? What types of lists do writers and publishers use? What do students need to know about supplemental information? And why are textbooks frequently color-coded? So this is a lot of information that you've got to have to answer, okay? All right, so I'm gonna, hang on, just grab that link. Okay. So I'm gonna make this bigger. Won't be able to see the whole page, but you can see it. They just used really small text, but if you go here, you can certainly see it a lot more clearly. So inside the square is kind of the rough idea of a textbook. And then all these little text boxes outside are talking to you about just all the different items on a textbook page. So sidebars offer information that complements, but is not always essential to the main text. So you can ignore them, but sometimes they're useful. The chapter heading, it teaches the students to use headings and subheadings to orient themselves. Not always, though. Sometimes people just get used to skipping those and don't realize that they're kind of important. The header up top is used to orient readers to the chapter and section. Many books divide chapters into sections or units. So for example, if you were, reading a giant history textbook, but you only wanted to know about history in the New France, you might look up here at the header real quick and just find where New France is. Icons and symbols. Here's a little icon. Textbooks use them throughout the book in a standardized way. When you see one, you can ask, what does that refer to? They may refer to activities or connections, cross-curricular links, or in some cases, multimedia tools. We actually use that in our course as well. There's a little picture of a guy with a book, and it's just your reminder to be doing your reading log. Hint, hint. Over here is called a pull box, which I must confess, I would have just thought was a sidebar. However, it usually features the following content: connections, features, strategies, and profiles. Textual organization. Textbooks try and organize their information into lists and paragraphs. Here, the boxed words indicate the different example of the paragraph's main idea. Words like first, another, and finally indicate that info is sequentially arranged. In other words, there's chronology, there's time involved here. More supplemental info. Most textbooks now include such regular features as career connections, technology links, or profiles of important people. Students need to learn when and why to read such content. They also need to realize that the info's brevity means it's complete. So for example, maybe you had a whole essay and one person was just briefly mentioned in the textbook page, but they're actually kind of important to history. That might be a spot where somebody would put some of the other things that person has done, but that you wouldn't need to read in the main text. Color codes. Textbooks frequently color code the book to help readers find their way around. Thus, all the fun facts would probably use the same color format. Reading figures. This is really common. Figure 512, timeline of literacy. When and why should you look at these? The whole point is that they're usually kind of listed like figure 5 is chapter 5, 12 is like the 12th visual in the chapter. How does it complement or how is it related to the text that it's linked or near to? Does it rephrase it, complete it, supplement it? Web links. Some textbooks will include links to websites. Let's see here, a footer. Footer may have the chapter heading. It may have the title. It might have an author. Pre-reading. Have students read the discussion questions before they start reading so they know what they need to understand and find. Reading directions. So here it's telling you what you're supposed to be doing during your reading. Underline all the verbs. Identify the expected outcome. Rewrite it as a checklist. Lists. They might have bulleted lists. These little things are called bullets. Or they might have a numbered checklist if there's things that they want you to know. Vocabulary. Vocabulary that might be here on the side. You might see it in bolded words. Sometimes you might see it italicized. See where the kind of the slanty words. Just trying to show you that that word is important, basically. If you're looking for the main idea, often the first and last sentence of a paragraph will give you the main idea. You can also look at the headings and subheadings. That talk we already did. Pre-reading, have students read the following: objectives, headers, subheaders, section questions, terms to know. Okay, so this is just an example, but you have to use this to answer the questions. You have a copy. I know it's a terrible copy and I apologize. I did not make that. You would go to the copy of this we have here. Hang on a second, let me find the URL. So there's the URL, okay? So you would go to that and go there. It does tell you in the text how to find it, how to read a textbook page, fun facts. It shows right up. Just check that it's the one from Literacy Leader and that it looks exactly like that. And then you can read the on-screen version. I kind of split it up here thinking that I would read that, but I ended up reading it differently. Okay. Hang on. All right. So this is a related assignment, okay? It doesn't use that same page, but it's related on the same concept of textbook features. This is also worth 15 marks. You can select any subject that interests you. For example, science, geography, math, whatever. Choose a textbook at your learning center. Hopefully there's some there. If not, the elementary school nearby might have some. You will use the following table called Textbook Feature Analysis to record some answers. You may not even know what all the features on the worksheet are, but your task is simply to find the features. This exercise is an attempt to get you to practice interacting with and investigating the features of a text. Please be aware, your novel, Jimmy Comes Home, is not a textbook, it's a novel. So it won't work for our purposes because it doesn't have these kind of text features. Now, if you don't have access to physical copies of textbooks, you can often find PDF copies of different textbooks online. Just enter a textbook PDF finder and see what comes up. Some of the sites might be members only, or they might want money. But if you hunt around a little bit, you should be able to find some free printable textbooks. Let me see if this link works, hopefully. Okay, so here's my Google search. I put textbook PDF finder, a whole bunch of things came up. 15 best websites to download a free PDF. I'm going to click on that and just see how it goes. Okay. Let's see if this comes up. Ew. Oh, I didn't like that. That doesn't really work for me. Hang on a second. Book boon. Okay. All right. I don't like these. I did pull one up and I'm going to show you the one that I found. If you keep hunting around, you'll find things. And I'm going to show you what I found. So here is a grade 9 social studies textbook called Issues for Canadians. It's actually the whole textbook. I have no idea why. But let me see here. If I click down my side, you can see it. They just obviously photographed, I guess, or have a digital copy of it. This is all the publishing information, table of contents, and then, I mean, you could read the entire textbook here if you wanted to. So you would pick anything you like. This is one you can pick if you want to. That's fine. Doesn't matter to me. Whatever works for you. Okay. Here are the questions you would need to be looking for. What is the title of the textbook? Who are the authors of the textbook? Textbooks often have more than one author. So just kind of quickly, hang on a sec. If we go back, it might be on the cover or, all right, hang on. If it was a novel, it would say right here, but this is not a novel. These are all the people involved in it, but the actual writers, hang on a second. Okay, so the senior author is Patricia Lychak. Other authors are Daryl Anderson. This gives his information. Alan Nogue, Jim Parsons, and then there's some contributors, okay? So those are the writers. Here they are, senior author, and then the different authors that go there. So you may have to kind of hunt around a little bit for it, but it will be. How many pages does the textbook have? Obviously, just go to the end and see. What is the name of the publisher? In the case that we were looking at, Nelson, might see Nelson, Gage, Addison, Wesley. Those are all really common Canadian publishing companies. What is the ISBN? The ISBN is a 10 or 13 digit number. Every book has one. And that is the only, like a textbook, and then a paperback version would have slightly different ISBNs. And then a workbook that came with the textbook might have a slightly different ISBN. It's its own unique number that helps you locate that exact book. Where is the ISBN located? You will have to look for it. You will see it. It will say ISBN next to it, okay? Create a citation. Citation is when you're saying, hey, this is a book I used for some of my information. It's really common when you're going to like college and university or even like grade 12 to begin learning how to use these kind of citations. So you would need the name of the author. And again, it's last name first. So for me, it wouldn't be Jillian Percy. It would be Percy, comma, Jillian. The title is usually underlined. The publisher's location, like say Toronto, then the name of the publisher and the date of publication. And again, if you're looking around, pull it up. Oh, there is the copyright. Oop, I just see some of the other things. Date of publication. It is possible sometimes that what you might get is like the original date was say 1990 and they've republished it in 2000. Put both down, then that's fine. All right, so you got the citation. Where is the table of contents? How is the information in the table of contents organized? How many chapters does this textbook have? Where is the index? When it says how is this information organized, I'm assuming that they're referring to the index there, okay? Does this textbook have any other sections at the end of the book besides the index, and list them? So physically take a look at the back and see what's there. Every textbook is a little bit different. Let me just kind of flip back here and see what mine's got. I'm going to go down to the very end here, some blank pages. Oh, here's a bunch of this would be copyright information about photos and figures and stuff, telling you where different things came from, because yeah, it's legit. Here's clearly my index. Sometimes you might find a glossary. Oh, look, here we go. My glossary is ahead of my index, though. Sometimes you might see, hey, here's some other books by the author, or here, go to this website and you'll see some other books by this publisher. You never know what could be there. So every book's going to be a little bit different. Oh, and we've just been doing this. I kind of set it up this way so that I could kind of look at things at the same time, but we've kind of been going back and forth, which is fine. All right. The upcoming assignment, they're all kind of covering everything today because it's kind of all textbooky stuff. So once you get the hang of it, you're not really going to need me to teach it over and over again. As I want to grab this nice little video on how to scan for information. Oh, and it just wants to. Okay, hang on a second.
Strategy while reading. First, let's think about why we might use a scanning strategy. Scanning is useful if you need to
pause it for a second. It's really quiet in mine. I don't know if it's quiet in yours. Let me see. Is that no? That one's quite up high.
Specific information quickly. You might be looking for answers to specific questions. For example, how many participants were included in the study? Or you might want to determine if a paper is relevant for your purposes. In this case, you're looking for the frequency of keywords in the text. The more frequently your keywords appear, the more relevant that paper is likely to be. For example, if your topic relates to gender equality in the workplace, you'd want these phrases or their synonyms to appear often in the text. It is not appropriate if you need to gain in-depth knowledge of a text. So how do you scan? First, as with all reading tasks, we need to identify our purpose. In this case, what information we need to find. This could be key terms or phrases, concepts, or particular sections. For example, if you wanted to know how many participants were involved in a study, you could go directly to the method section. Next, scan the text by running your eye quickly over the page, looking only for the information you need. Ignore everything else and don't read every word. When you find what you're looking for, read the information or sentences around it. Finally, decide if this paper is relevant to your purpose. Does it answer your questions? Is it specific enough to your task? If yes, read in more detail. If not, discard it and move on. Let's imagine that we're writing a paper on the topic of interpersonal strategies in online interactions. We've brainstormed the topic and identified specific questions we need the answers to, and then located an article we think contains the information we need. In a moment, we're going to scan the discussion section of this paper to find the answers to these questions. Remember, don't try to read every word. Run your eyes over the paper until you notice the key words you're looking for. Let's start with the first question. Pause the video and try to scan the text as quickly as possible to find an example of a passive information-seeking strategy.
So I'm going to pause and say, I would drive me crazy if I had to read the whole thing. But I don't have to read the whole. That's the whole point. Sometimes when people are getting overwhelmed, it's because they're trying to do more work than is needed. Here, I'm looking for this phrase, passive information. So, I'm just kind of flipping through, looking for those words. Passive information right here. So what is an example of a passive information seeking strategy?
When you found it, restart the video.
Hang on. Passive information seeking strategies, such as looking through a target's pictures and scrolling through his or her timeline posts, were found to be more normative before a couple begins dating rather than after a romantic relationship had been established, which seems kind of obvious because it's a little late to do anything. Okay. So without reading everything, I don't even know what the rest of it says. I found the answer to my question really quickly.
How did you do? Did you find it quickly? Here's how I approached this task. From the question, I identified the key term as passive information strategy. I scanned, looking only for that expression. Once I found it, I noticed the phrase such as, indicating an example would follow. I continued reading and found the answer. Let's try the second question. Pause the video and scan to find the answer. Did you
We're not
find
really
the
going to pause
information
it.
more
Well,
quickly
actually,
that time?
I better hang on a second.
I identified the keyword.
Okay. At what relationship stage are investment and intimacy typically low? Okay. So again, I'm looking for the words investment and intimacy. So I think here. I must be reading too fast because I'm definitely not finding those two words. I've got interactive. Okay. I'm not sure if there's a trick or if my
relationship stage, investment, intimacy, and low, and scanned until I noticed them. The first time I came across relationship stages, I read around it and disregarded this instance as it seemed to focus on active or passive strategies, not investment and intimacy. The second instance doesn't relate to the topic either, but as it's in the topic sentence, that tells me that the answer might be in this paragraph. Finally, I noticed the words intimacy and investment are typically low and went back to the beginning of that sentence to find the answer.
All right. I'm going to pause it now and say, I messed up. But you can see it is a useful strategy, but if you're trying to read too quick, like I probably was, then it can be overused, not be as useful. Okay. I'm going to head back to our main thing. So that's specifically scanning where you have just a specific word you're looking for. Okay. Skimming is a little bit different. Skimming is where you're trying to kind of get a quick sense of what an article is about or what a paragraph's about without having to sit down and read the whole thing and understand everything. This is really useful. Remember how you're doing the research for your brochure? You're not going to want to read every single word on every single website you look for. You're going to just want to skim, like, okay, does the Mayo Clinic have anything on alcohol abuse? Or does Focus on the Family have anything on parenthood? Does the Ministry of Health have anything on parenting? And you would just quickly look through and kind of try and get a sense of whether you've got information there that is useful to you. And once you've found some stuff, then you can sit down and kind of read it more thoroughly and make sure you understand it. But you don't want to spend that kind of time for every single page you look at. Otherwise, your project will take you forever. So let me just kind of flip through and see if this is. Oh, no, I remember. I looked at this and it was a little bit titchy. I was afraid it was a little bit too in depth. So we're going to skip that one. It was a very high level. I was kind of a bit confused by it. Okay. So skimming and, oh, hang on. I do want to talk about skimming. So for skimming, you might take a look at the headings, the subheadings. This is where looking at the first sentence in each paragraph, because that's supposed to be the intro, can give you a quick sense, right? So if you're seeing a lot of if you're looking for parenting, you're seeing a lot of things like single parents often find, many parents found it was useful to, oh, okay, well, this is an article that might be useful for what I'm looking for, right? If it was all about I don't know, couples or something like that instead. Okay, this isn't what I was looking for, right? So this assignment 22 is 15 marks. So use the textbook pages that follow to help you answer the following questions. You don't need to read all the words in the page, but do the following, okay? Skim over the whole passage to gain an overall impression or a main idea. Remember, skimming is when you're just quickly glancing over to get the general idea of the passage. In one sentence, write down what you think the passage is about, okay? B, scan the passage to find the answers to the following questions. Write your answers in full sentences. Remember that scanning is looking for specific words or images that will help you answer specific questions. So, what were the men and older boys responsible for? 2 marks. Give 3 reasons why Indigenous family relationships baffled Europeans. 3 marks. Why were the families of the early Indigenous people considered egalitarian? If you are unsure of the meaning, you can try and think about it from the context of the word. You can read past it and see if it makes sense without the word, or using a dictionary. I'm going to help us cheat and just go, egalitarian would mean that the men and the women have equal roles. One is not considered higher or more valuable than the others, and they share equal amounts of power in a relationship. I don't think that's a word you just kind of know off by hand. So if you've never heard it, it's a bit obscure. Why did European men often live with or marry Indigenous women? In your unit packages for Unit 2, there's about 4 pages that are from a textbook, and that is what you're going to need to look at in order to answer these questions. So I wanted to go back to question A. Skim over the whole passage to gain an overall impression or a main idea. In one sentence. Now, I don't know how would one sentence be worth 5 marks unless they're talking about like do a sentence for each page, because there's about 4 or 5 pages here. Use your best judgment for that. I think you are probably going to need more than just one sentence, to be honest. All right. So here are, and you can see this is dense text. It's small and it's got a lot of information. So to skim it, you would just kind of looking at the first little bit. The history of parenting is often remembered with a nostalgic view and an assumption that it is now. I see the word parenting styles. I see family history in Canada. It's talking about Aboriginal families. Family history in Canada begins with the hunter-gatherer societies of the Aboriginal peoples. Some Inuit of the Canadian North still practice a hunter-gatherer lifestyle. So you can see how I'm not reading everything. I'm reading over it a little bit, trying to get a sense of it, looking at the pictures and the captions. If there were little subheadings, I would look at those. After 1500 BCE, many groups of Aboriginals began to give up their nomadic way of life. Last one, women and younger children took primary responsibility for agriculture, while men and older boys hunted locally. Families within the large group were nuclear in nature. Okay. So just kind of skimming and reading the beginning and the end, I've already found at least one of my answers. So skimming isn't just reading quickly, it's reading selectively. It's picking parts of it. It's not going to give you the best sense of the entire textbook. It's really just meant to give you a quick sense to know, hey, is this worth reading more, or is this not really useful to what I'm doing? If it's useful, read it through. And as you're reading, you may find, oh, you know what? I thought this was going to be useful. And now I'm reading the first page or two and it's not useful to what I want. That's fine. So for this, you're going to have to read those in using the different strategies, sometimes skimming, sometimes scanning, sometimes in depth, and try and find these answers. Okay. All right. And we've got one more assignment. I know I'm giving you a bunch of assignments because it's the weekend too, right? I understand you won't necessarily get everything done, but they're all kind of connected to each other in how what they're talking about. So they're kind of linked. Assignment 23 is called Visuals in Information Texts, and it is worth 12 marks. And it says, now that you have examined different examples from textbooks, you should be able to answer the following questions in full sentences. What kind of visual, graph, line graph, bar graph, circle graph, do you think would best show the following employment data from Statistics Canada Labor Force 2021? Hint, you might remember making this kind of visual in math class. Sketch the visual you would use. When they're saying sketch, they're meaning you don't need to get out your ruler and your graph paper. It's okay to just do a loose idea, okay? But here's the information you need to show on your sketch, okay? It still should show this information. In 2021, approximately 6 million people were working in Ontario, of which 54,000 were male workers, 46,000 were female workers. 82% worked full-time, 18% worked full-time, part-time. 84% were employees, and 16% were self-employed. Is there more on the next page real quick? No. Okay. So think about what kind of graph would best show this information. Would a line graph work best for that? Would a bar graph work? Would a circle graph be better? You can even explore the couple of different ones and kind of see what you think. And then whatever your sketch is, take a picture of it and hand it in. This is worth about 5 marks, okay? Then for this one, it says, read the report below and then answer the questions that follow it. So here there's a little article about Beaver Brae secondary school students and the staff host spring feast and powwow. And there's a short little article about here, and it says, what kind of visual is used here? Why do you think that was chosen? Remember, think is an opinion word. You're not going to find it in there. You have to decide yourself what you think the writer was doing. Do you think it is effective in conveying information? So again, that's your opinion. You can say, yes, I think it's effective because, and give me some reasons. Or you can say, no, I don't think it's effective because, and give me the reasons. But you have to be able to say the reasons, okay? It's worth 3 marks, so just no or yes is not enough information. All right, a quick reminder that you need to be continuing to fill out the reading log every week. When we get to Thursday or Friday, take a few moments and fill out your reading log for the week. Remember that you will be handing it in at the end of this course as it is part of your literacy portfolio. And your literacy portfolio overall is worth 10%, not just the reading log, but the whole thing is worth 10%, but I will be looking for those reading logs. Remember, this is not necessarily novels. It can be newspaper articles, posters, Facebook messages, poems, song lyrics, game hints, your kids' homework, a letter somebody handed you, information that the doctor hands you at the nursing station. Anything that involves reading counts and can be put in that portfolio. Okay. Thank you so much for listening. I know there was a lot of information today. If anyone is struggling, please feel free to talk to me. I'll be here tomorrow and be happy to talk to people about assignments. And I hope you have a good weekend and that everything goes well. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you again on Monday.